11:15 a.m. Walking the dog. We're nicely scrubbed, have hurriedly flung on some clothes, and are en route to the lounge when a drooling furball bounds up to us, its tail wagging and its eyes glistening. We stare into the begging face and realise that, despite our dog's lack of speech, he's basically saying, "May I remind you that there are damp tennis balls to retrieve, and some idiot, I'm not naming any names, has locked the front door." Annoyingly, he has a point. It's not just a new day for us. Our pets also have their own routines. Pets. Why bother? To be blunt, owning a pet is a pretty illogical thing to do. They're constantly hungry, their medical care is often pricier than our own, they need plenty of supervision, they'll ruin your furniture, they're always trying to shag stuff, they're monosyllabically inarticulate, and you can't even eat them. They're basically human teenagers. In fact, even the English word, pet, referred to a spoiled child in the 16th century, being a probable abbreviation of the French word petit, little one. There's plenty of scientific and psychological evidence to suggest our bond with animals can be a powerfully parental one. Some people really do love their pet as they would a child, and this is only further exemplified by the reports from early anthropologists who observed indigenous women from Guyana and Australia breastfeeding baby mammals, including monkeys and deer, in order to nurse them to strength when their own mothers couldn't. Similarly, St. Veronica Juliana, an 18th century Catholic mystic, used to breastfeed a lamb of God as a rather literal demonstration of her faith. And in Europe, the reverse principle applied well into the 20th century, with impoverished human children going full Romulus and Remus by suckling from a goat or donkey in order to receive their necessary calcium and fat intake. Humans nursing animals is a pretty extraordinary thing to witness, I imagine, but it shouldn't really be so unexpected. The Nobel Prize-winning zoologist Konrad Lorenz argued that all baby vertebrates share uniformly cute physical traits: soft bodies, big eyes, oversized heads, endearingly clumsy movement. And we're suckers for this Disney-esque physiology. We project our genetic drive to nurture our own young onto similarly proportioned creatures, which perhaps explains why the internet is essentially just a digital shrine for kittens. But when did animals stop being food and start becoming friends? As ever, the answer lies in the Stone Age. It's bad manners to eat your friends. It's thought that the emergence of Homo sapiens in the Stone Age contributed to the extinction of about 85% of large land animals, otherwise known as megafauna, including giant sloths, giant wombats, giant beavers, giant kangaroos, and mammoth-sized mammoths. So, why, if we were busily wiping out everything with a heartbeat, did our cave-dwelling ancestors decide to spare some animals to keep as pets? The likely answer is that canines were indeed our earliest companions, probably due to their dual abilities to hunt and act as danger-spotting sentinels. A skull found in Belgium's Goyet Cave has been scientifically dated to 31,700 years ago, and DNA analysis suggests this animal was the product of a deliberate breeding program. It wasn't a wolf, so it must have been dog version 1.0. As we slip our feet into some trainers, fetch the leash from the rear porch and swing open the front door, our loyal hound bounds off in pursuit of passing cars. Worried he's about to get run over, we shout, "Stay!" and those powerful limbs come to an immediate halt. Our dog may be disappointed with our censorious rules, but he's going to abide by them. This is actually pretty astonishing. Somehow, our ancestors invented an animal willing to obey our orders. But how? Well, it wasn't just a case of shouting, "Roll over, play dead," at a fully grown wolf, because that's a recipe for getting your throat savaged. No, the trick was probably to grab very young wolf cubs and socialize them into the human tribe before breeding them with another equally tamed wolf. By constantly selecting the least aggressive breeding pairs, the genetic offspring would have been less instinctually prone to slaughtering everything in sight. And after many generations, the howling wolf would have evolved into the barking dog, able and willing to communicate with humans, to fetch slippers, and to harass postal workers. Surprisingly, it may not have taken long to produce this transformation, as evolution can move pretty quickly if given a firm shove. In 1959, the Russian scientist Dmitry Balayev showed that after just 10 generations of experimentation with feral foxes, his tamed breeds weren't just less aggressive, they had biologically altered in both appearance and reproductive cycle. It seems the process of selecting for personality traits accidentally selects for physical ones as well. The Pet Cemetery. Sad as it is to imagine, one day our beloved Pooch will pass away, and we may feel compelled to bury him in our back garden. This might seem a tremendously modern custom, but nothing could be further from the truth. At Ayun al-Hammam in Jordan, in a grave dating back 16,500 years, a man's skeleton has been found deliberately buried alongside fox remains, with both his corpse and that of the fox having been posthumously relocated from another grave. Was there a special connection between person and animal? Was the fox a pet? It does seem that way. Or why else would both bodies be so carefully moved? If so, clearly Balayev wasn't the first to tame foxes. More tellingly, dogs were also given respectful burials in the Stone Age, not only alongside their human masters, but individually too, presumably because dogs live shorter lives than their owners and die first. This act of burial suggests a close symbiotic relationship between human and animal. If the dog had merely been functionally useful in life but unmourned for in death, might we not have expected it to have been eaten for dinner or chucked in a ditch for the vultures to snack upon? Man's best friend. The panicked animal strained at its chains, desperately tugging at the post to which it was tied, but there was no escape. The sky was thick with black smoke, and hot pumice was raining down. The whimpering animal's master was nowhere to be seen, a victim perhaps of the noxious gas settling from the mountainside, and so the dog barked and barked for someone else to release it from its shackles. But no one came. A thermal blast wave of 500 degrees centigrade blew through the town, killing every living thing in its path. And within hours, the corpses and buildings had vanished beneath 22 meters of volcanic ash. Today, a tragic plaster cast of this Pompeian dog, curled despairingly around the post, remains as a reminder of Mount Vesuvius's devastating eruption in 79 CE. But it's not the only canine to be found in the excavated ruins of Herculaneum and Pompeii, for there's a beautifully preserved floor mosaic depicting a large black hound held by a leash, with its teeth bared threateningly and its legs fringed with a long dark fur. For the Romans, as with many other societies, the dog was a familiar presence. We know, for example, that it played a key role on Roman farms. The agriculturally minded writer Junius Moderatus Columella advised that sheepdogs should be aggressive to, as he says, pick quarrels and to fight, and they should be preferably white so they weren't mistaken for wolves in the dim light of the dawn and therefore killed. We're out in the park playing fetch when some nefarious mugger leaps out of a bush to snatch a nearby lady's handbag. If we'd been throwing a frisbee for our pet cat, which is a bit weird, I know, then its response to the assault would likely have been to stare with bored disdain. But our dog leaps into action, charging at the ne'er-do-well with snarling teeth and a piercing bark, and, alarmed at the inbound exocet of teeth heading his way, the criminal drops the bag and flees in terror. Whether it's scientifically true or not, we perceive dogs to be steadfastly loyal and protective of the vulnerable. This is nothing new. Medieval stories told of how dogs would refuse to budge from their dead master's corpse, and in rare instances their testimony was even permitted in the resulting murder trials. More recently, it's been reported that Adolf Hitler patronised an animal training school in the Second World War in the hope that hounds could be trained to speak, count, and even spy on the enemy. This proves a slightly over-optimistic wish. The most notable achievement was one dog's ability to bark, "Herr Hitler," when asked, "Who is the Führer?" Though in all likelihood,